Hello and welcome to my channel. If you've been here before, welcome back. My name is Alfonso Peluso and I'm a Studio Associate Professor in the College of Architecture at IIT, the home of the legendary Mies van der Rohe, and I'm adjunct faculty at Columbia College Chicago in the Interior Architecture program. Shout out to all of my students. I hope everyone is doing well today. I'm doing great. It is spring in Chicago. Today is a sunny day. It's 60 degrees, so getting pretty excited about the weather here. What are we going to look at today? Today we're going to look at creating massing models in Grasshopper. So we're going to cover a few things here that I have in this topics list. We're going to look at draw full names, box 2-point, solid difference, construct point, twisted box, and a little bit of drawing techniques. Alright, so this little model that I have set up here, what can I do with it, just to give you a sneak preview? So you see this little massing model and we have this overhang area, and what I can do with that is I can start to move around some of my parameters. So I'm raising and lowering that cantilevered area. I can move that into the building. Let's get a good view of this. So I can make that larger or smaller. I can move it away from the corner, and I can make a little hole in it. Okay. I can make that extend all the way through the building. So now I have a little courtyard, and I can change its dimension. I can bring it into the building and make a hole all the way through. So there you see just some of the capabilities we can do with massing models in Grasshopper, and we're going to look at much more. Alright, let's get started. Alright, before I actually jump into the tutorial, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, what are you waiting for? Go and search me up on YouTube, click on subscribe, click on all the bells, click on the bell to receive all the notifications. I recently reached 8,000 subscribers, so I want to thank everyone for that. That's truly amazing. I'm looking forward to reaching 9,000 soon. There is something here for everyone, so subscribe, take a look, and have fun. Alright, also follow me on Instagram, see what I'm up to at my first name Alfonso _ my last name Peluso. And recently I had some midterms at IIT, so you can see what my students produced there. I had some midterms at Columbia College, you can see what they produced there, and much more. Alright, let's jump back into this tutorial. Okay, draw full names. So I'm thinking that if you're looking at this massing models video, you're probably fairly new to Grasshopper. Maybe not. But if you are, I think the best way to work when you're first starting out is making sure that you turn on draw full names. So what does that do? If draw full names is off, if I bring out the next capsule that we're going to look at, which is box 2-point, what you see on the left and on the right, the inputs and the outputs, is you see abbreviations. So if you're new to Grasshopper, it's hard to determine what APB is. So I like to go to display and turn on draw full names. Now I can see, oh, it's looking for point A, point B, plane, and then the output is a box. So that's draw full names. This is box 2-point. So we're going to look at box 2-point to begin with. Okay, now the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that in Rhino, you want to think about your units. So if you're making a massing model of a building at full scale, you're going to want to work in feet. working in inches, you're going to have to, if something's 50 feet, you're going to have to take 50 feet times 12 and then figure out that number. So I would say massing models want to work in feet. So File, New, and we're going to look at a building is considered a large object, so we're going to look at large objects feet for our template. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and turn off the grid for this tutorial. So I'm going to use my F7 key in Rhino to turn off the grid. Okay, box 2 point. So box 2 point is looking for 2 points, point A and point B. One is going to be the lower left-hand corner of the box, and the other is going to be the upper right-hand corner of the box. So we're going to use construct point. We'll use this one quite a bit today, construct point. Okay, and what this does is it is looking for XYZ coordinates to create this point. By default, XYZ are set to 0, and you see that when I hover over these. You see I hover over Z, it says one locally defined value, and that's 0. So that puts that point right at 0, 0, 0. So I can leave that there. I can copy and paste this, Control C, Control V, or if you're on a Mac, Command C and Command V. Alright, I'm going to plug that in. Okay, now we don't see a box yet because these are in the same place, those 2 points. So I'm going to add in an X dimension. So let's say that this box is going to be 50 feet. So double click and type in 50. So I'm going to plug that into the X. And let's say I'm going to copy and paste that number slider. Let's say 50 feet in the Y. That's going to give me a square at this point. And if I copy and paste that one more time, alright, so that's going to give me my box, which is a cube because it's 50 by 50 by 50. So this is of course completely parametric. I can change the size and the height. So I'm going to lower this down. I'm going to make it more at building scale here. So something like that looks pretty good. Alright, so that's my main box. So I'm going to use a scribble, and I'm going to call this massing. And then I'm going to make my subtraction. So I'm going to add another scribble. I'll call this subtraction. Okay, so I'm going to make another box 2 point. Now I could just take everything that I have above and copy and paste it. So let's go ahead and do that. Control C, Control V. Okay, so that box is in the same place. Now, this box that I'm using for subtraction, it's going to be smaller. So I'm going to go ahead and change its values, and you see it getting smaller. What I don't have control of, so right now I have control of the length, the width, and the height of the box, but I don't have control over the position of the box. And that's going to happen by plugging in some number sliders to the XYZ for this first construct point. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this number slider. Okay, so these need to be smaller than the values plugged into the second construct point. So now that's getting to be smaller in the X. So I'll copy and paste that, and this is going to make it smaller in the Y. Okay, so we'll start by making a hole in the center of the building, close to the center of the building anyway. So I'm going to move this over. There we go, something like that. Now I want to make this taller than the building so that it cuts the hole all the way through. Alright, so how do we do that? In Rhino, you use a Boolean difference. In Grasshopper, it's called a solid difference. And if I go to transform, okay, where's my solid difference at? Let's do this. So I'm going to type in solid difference, and I'm going to use Control and I. So this is a good way to, not Control and I, but Control and Alt. So there's Control and Alt for my solid difference. So I hold Control and Alt, I hover my mouse over the solid difference, I click, and it shows me where it's at. So it's under intersect and shape. So here is my solid difference. I can do a solid union. I can do, if I'm working with 2D shapes, I can do region difference, region intersection, region union. So some of the things that you've done in Rhino, you can find them here. They just have some different names to them. Okay. So there's my solid difference. I'm going to plug my massing box into A and my subtraction box into B. And then I'm going to look at the result of this through a custom preview. Okay, so now we're seeing everything. So what I'm going to do is hide everything but the custom preview. So I'm going to select my custom preview. I'm going to use Shift Control I to invert the selection. And I'm going to right click in the canvas and choose Preview Off. Okay, so now we see our box. I'm going to change this View Display to Rendered. Okay, I am going to there we go. Turn off my grid. So I had to turn off my grid once again. Alright. So now I can do the same things that I showed in the beginning of the video by changing the size of the subtraction box. Now at the moment, the subtraction box, it doesn't have a Z plugged into it. So that's going to be important. It has a Z for the height. This is the height of the box. But it doesn't have one for the bottom of the box. So I'm going to add in one. I'm going to keep that lower. Okay, so now you're seeing a little courtyard situation, like a second floor courtyard. So let's work with that a little bit. Okay, so instead of a courtyard all the way through, I have a courtyard in the middle, like a second floor. I can, let's work with this a little bit more. Okay, this is the X, here's the Y. I want to move that over a little bit. Let's see, not that direction. There we go. Okay, so that's another condition. Alright, let's get the cantilever condition going. So I'm going to lower this down. Okay, so we can make an L shape. So that's a good one to look at too. Let's keep the L going. So I can change the size of that L. Alright, so I need to pick up the Z height is my guess. would help me if I could see that box. So I'm going to turn that box back on. Okay, there's the box. Now I can see the box. So I'm going to lower this down, and I'm going to lower its Z height. Now I have the cantilevered condition. Alright, so a lot you can do with just some basic massing with a solid difference and a couple box 2 points. And solid difference doesn't always have to be a box, okay, as long as it's a solid object. If we look at our solid objects in Grasshopper, alright, so let's go to surface and let's go to primitive. Okay, so we have a bunch of boxes we can make. We can make things like a cone, a cylinder, and a sphere. So those are our solid objects that we can make in primitive, so we can use those for subtraction. I want to look at another technique. So that's one technique. I'm going to look at a technique with constructing points. Okay, so I'm going to turn off this. I'm going to draw a not so straight line across here. Give it some line weight, line type, and give it some color. Okay, move that up. Okay, I am going to unplug my custom preview so that no longer shows up. Okay, so we're gonna make some massing based on points. So Grasshopper, Rhino, when you work in Rhino, you really don't create geometry using points. But in Grasshopper, points are very helpful, and they drive a lot of the parametric capabilities of Grasshopper. So we use points quite often in Grasshopper. So let's just start from scratch. So construct point. Now a quick way to get to construct point, this is back when it was just called point XYZ, so I can type in point XYZ and I can grab construct point. I don't know why that's a little easier for me. If you type in point, it doesn't show up. So point XYZ, if that's a little easier than typing out construct point. Okay, so I'm going to draw the footprint of a building using points and a polyline. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll leave this point at 0, 0, 0. So there's that. There's my 0, 0, 0 point. I'm going to copy and paste this. I'm going to make this point 50 feet away in the Y. So let's see where that point. So here are my 2 points. And if you're not sure which is which, you can just click on them and then the points will turn green. Okay, so there's 2 points. Now I'm going to draw 2 more points over here on the right side. So I'm going to copy and paste this. And I'm going to set my X to 50. Okay, let's see where that point is. Alright, so here's my first point. So I'm spun around in the viewport, definitely spun around. That's the only problem with working with your grid off, because you're not sure where XYZ is. So let's see, let's make this wireframe. There we go. So with wireframe, I can see my XYZ coordinates. Alright. So there's my first point, my second point, my third point, and I'm going to make a 4th point. Copy and paste this. Okay, so I'm going to lower the y. Okay, so if I lower it back to 0, I'm just getting a square, which is fine for now. So let's use a polyline command. So I'll go ahead and plug all of these into vertices. So I have to use my shift key to plug more than one capsule into this vertices input. Okay, you're going to notice that this is open. It's not a closed polyline. And you see that there is an input to make this closed. So what I need to plug in there is something called a Boolean toggle. So a little different than a Boolean difference in Rhino. This is a Boolean toggle. So if I plug this into closed, I need to toggle this by double clicking on the word false. So I'm toggling that to true. Okay, so that's my closed polyline. Alright. So I am going to add a scribble here. And I'm going to call this bottom curve. So you might be thinking, why is he calling that a curve? It's a polyline. It's made up of straight line segments. Well, in Rhino, everything is a curve. So that is a curve. So I just got used to thinking that way. Okay. If you're new to Grasshopper, something else that you might want to do is you might want to group these things together. So I can take this and I can use Control G and I can right click over it and I can change its color. Okay, and that gives it a color. Alright, so that's my bottom curve. Now I want to make my top curve. So I can take this and I can copy and paste it. Oops. So I'm going to select it all, copy, paste it. Okay, and I'm going to call this my top curve. And I'm going to change the color of the group. Okay, so having groups are nice because I can move this all together because I'm going to put my top curve up above my bottom curve so that I'm thinking of my Grasshopper definition like I'm going to see the geometry in Rhino. So this is the curve on top, so that's the group on top, and this is the curve on the bottom, and that's the curve on the bottom. Okay, so for my top curve, I need z heights. So I'm going to double click and I'm going to type in 25 and I'm going to plug that into my z. Okay, so now you see that point is being raised. The way that I add to a group is if I want to add this number slider to a group, I have it selected. I right click over the group and I choose add to group. Okay, so that's my z height. So all of these need a z height. So for right now, if I copy and paste this, I'm going to plug it in. It's not part of the group, so that's the only problem with making the group ahead of time. You just have to keep adding it to the group, or you can delete the group by selecting it and deleting it, and then go back and add the group later. Okay. Alright, so there's 25. Those 2 points are raised at 25. I'll copy and paste this. Okay, copy and paste this. Alright, so just 2 polylines, one above the other. I'm going to Control G to group this. Okay, so if I loft between the 2 polylines, so I'm using my shift key and plugging that into curves. Okay, so there's my loft. And notice it's open. So I need to cap this loft. So I'm going to type in cap, double click and type in cap holes, and I'll plug that into brep. Okay, so if I hover over the output for loft, it says open brep. If I hover over the cap holes, it says closed brep. So having a closed brep is important if you're going to do some subtraction to it. Okay. So you might be saying to yourself, well, big deal. He made a box. He made a box earlier with his box 2 points. All right. Yes, that's true. But what can I do now? This is really very parametric. So I'm going to hide this loft capsule. So I have just my cap holes on. I'm going to add a custom preview. Plug that in. Okay. This custom preview is kind of neat because I can change my color by double clicking and adding a color swatch. There's my color swatch. And that changes the color. I'm going to turn my cap holes off. Okay, white is super challenging to see, but so here I can change the color of that. Okay. All right, so what can I do? Well, let's look at this top curve. So let's say that I want to angle the building. So I want to slant to the roof because I want to bring in some light or have some clear story windows. So I can do that by raising the values or raising the height of these 2 points where I'm putting my cursor. So I need to find where those 2 points are. So there's one and there's the other. So that one and that one. Okay, so these two, if I raise those points up, we're going to talk about this in a moment. You see that it's no longer a closed brep. Brep is a poly surface. So I'm going to raise these up to 40. So I'm going to make them both 40. Okay, so as soon as I did that, it stayed closed. Okay, so now I have this, pitched shed roof, I guess. I was trying to think of the term for it. So now I have a shed roof on it. Now I could be using the same number slider, right? So I could plug this in so I don't have to have 2 number sliders that I want to change. So now you see that they're both changing. So that's one way you can look at the massing of this. But I do want to look at how you can move these points at different heights and still get a closed polyline. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm going to plug these in. Not a closed polyline, but a closed loft. Okay, so this just has to be at 40. Because why do I want a closed loft? Well, I want to put a hole in the center of this object. Okay, so let's do that. Let's go ahead and put a hole in it. So I can go ahead and create another box 2 point. It needs a point A and a point B. So I'm going to use my point XYZ, construct point, and go ahead and plug that into A. So scribbles are good, telling your future self what you're doing here. So I'm going to add a scribble. And I'm going to call this subtraction. Okay, so that point's just sitting at 0, 0, 0. I'm going to add some values for XYZ, so I'm going to double click and type in 50. So I see that point moving around, copy and paste this. See that moving around there. Copy and paste this one. Line these up. Alright, so that's 1 point. Let's lower that down to 0. This is going to be my second point. Okay, so move these. I'm going to raise it up through the object. Okay, so let's move these. Let's move this subtraction down. Okay, so I'm going to add a Boolean, not a Boolean difference, but a solid difference. Okay, so what I'm subtracting is I'm subtracting my cap holes, because that is my closed. If I hover over it, that's my closed brep. This custom preview doesn't have an output in it, so I can unplug this by using my control key, holding down my control key and plugging it in that way. And we will move this out here and plug the solid difference in. Okay, so my cap holes is going to go into brep A, and my box 2 point is going to go into brep B. And then if I hide my box 2 point, we see that we've created a hole in this. So some, fairly complex geometry. So let's go ahead and move the subtraction around a little bit. So you see, it's a quick way to look at massing. And if I go back to my curves, like if I look at my bottom curves, right now I've set this up to be, a square, but this is fully parametric. So I can start to change. You see what's happening here. I can start to move some of these, and we're getting some angling happening there. Let's look at it from maybe from like a top view. Okay, I'm actually quite happy that this is staying closed, but you're getting non-planar surfaces here, so you're getting some warping in your surfaces. Okay, so you see some possibilities here. You got to be careful there. That's moving into my box that I'm subtracting, so we're getting some odd things happening there. Odd and interesting. Okay. Alright, so what I want to look at now, let me put this back. Figure out where I need to put it back to. Alright, so this was 50, I believe. This one was 50. This was 50, and this is 0. Okay. Alright, so what if I want to change the z heights of these, so of my top curve? So right now my top curve, both z heights are the same. They're both at 40. So as soon as I lower this down, this is no longer a closed brep or a closed loft. Alright, so let's look at what we have available to us to make it closed. Alright, so I'm going to draw a not so straight line across here. Give it some weight, give it some line type, give it some color. Let's make it a little darker. Whenever I hit the green check mark, it switches back to another window. Alright. So we're going to look at something called a twisted box. So here's our twisted box. So I am going to bring out a twisted box. And if I use my Control and Alt just to see where that's at, that's under Transform and then under the Morph tab. So you can find some other options there that might be helpful for you. So for the twisted box, it's looking for 8 corners, 8 corner points. Well, I have 8 corner points. I have them here. Okay, so I'm going to take this information and copy and paste it and bring it on down. Okay, I don't want, let me undo that. I don't want these polylines to come with it. So I'm going to make a window. Let's see if I can make this happen. Okay, there we go. So I just made a window. From left to right is a window, from right to left is a crossing. Okay, let's take my top curve with me. Okay, so this capsule, let me zoom in so we can all see this. This capsule is looking for 8 corner points. So I have 8 corner points. I have 4 from my top curve and 4 from my bottom curve. I can plug all those in. Let's hide what we have above. Sorry, I'm zooming around a lot pretty fast. So I'm going to right click, preview off, unplug this custom preview. Okay, so my 8 corner points, there they are. I'm going to plug them all in. So I'm just plugging these in order. Let's get these last 2. Okay, so here's my twisted box. Okay, so I'm going to add a custom preview so I can see it because it doesn't display the shaded geometry for me. Let's see what's coming out of twisted box. So it just says twisted box. Doesn't let me know if it's open or closed. Alright, I'm not seeing this being displayed, so let's try this. I'm going to plug it into a geometry container. Still nothing. Okay, so I know if I were to bake it, it's going to show up in Rhino. So if I right click over this, I'm going to do it on the twisted box output. I'm going to right click over twisted box and choose bake and bake it to the default layer. And then I can see that that is indeed a closed poly surface or a closed B-rep. Okay, so let's look at the whole point of the twisted box is that I can keep this closed if I change the Z heights to be different. So let's look at that. So here, which corner is this? Alright, so that's that corner. When we were doing that, we weren't getting this to stay closed. But it is closed. It will do a Boolean difference. Up above, I wasn't able to do a Boolean difference. So let me take my subtraction and my solid difference. Copy and paste that. Bring it on down. Okay, so my subtraction my subtraction stays the same, coming from B rep B. B rep A is going to come from the twisted box now. Okay, and then we'll plug this in. Okay, so let's take a look at what we have here. So now I'm able to Boolean into this irregular form, which I wasn't able to do above without the twisted box. So let's just look at the position, excuse me, of this. I think it's the height. That's what it is. It's the height that's not cutting all the way through it. Yeah, so here's the height cutting all the way through. So just seeing what I can do with this. So I can do all the things that I did before at the very beginning of this video. So let's look at just one of these. You guys can kind of play with this on your own. Alright, so this one, I'm not able to get all the way to the front of that. Alright, what's happening here? This is at 0, 0, 0. This is the Y. That's my second Y. Let's see this box. Let's turn it on. Alright, that's why. Sometimes you just have to turn it on to see what's happening. So now with it all the way through, now it's cutting. Alright, so you can imagine what you can do with that. There's a lot of capabilities there, parametric capabilities. You can draw a lot of shapes with points. Alright, so one last thing is just to talk about drawing techniques, because everything I've been doing right now has been rectilinear, so just kind of using straight curve segments. So you just want to keep in mind that you can draw lines and arcs, and you can draw curves in Grasshopper. So I just want to spend a little bit of time just drawing a polyline that just has a 3-point arc on it, just so that you can see that and give you some inspiration. So I'm going to select all of this, right click, and turn the preview off. I don't always have to draw a new not so straight line. I can select it. It's a little hard to select these sometimes, and I can copy and paste it and drag it down. Okay, so what I can do once again is I can use some of the information I already have. So I'm going to use this top curve. Actually, I'll use the bottom curve just to show this. Alright, so I'll take this bottom curve information, copy and paste it, and I'm going to look at my polyline. Okay, so I can plug all these in using the shift key. And it's not a closed polyline. Okay, we looked at that before. But I can do some things to this, like I can add an arc on the outside of this. So the order that you plug these in was really important. So keep that in mind. Let's turn on these construct points. Preview on. Okay, so that's that point, that point, that point, and that point, and then it leaves the open line there. So if I plugged it in, let's take a look at that. If I plugged it in the opposite direction, would it look any different? It's still going to give that same open line there because I'm just going in this direction. So still have that there. Okay. So if I wanted it, let's say I wanted to go this way and leave the opening at the top. So it's just a matter of, I'm going to unplug all these. I'm going to right click and use disconnect and choose disconnect all. Okay, so it's just a matter of the order I'm plugging them in. So if I'm gonna start with this one. Okay, I'm gonna plug that in, and then I'm gonna go to this one, which is that one. Use my shift key, and then my next one is this direction, and then my last one. So now I have the opening over here. So just to show you, the order of points matters. Okay, so I'm going to plug all these back in. Okay, I'm going to add an arc here. So I'm going to double click and type in arc, and I'm going to choose arc, start, point, end point, and tangent vector. Okay, so my start point, I need to find, where are you, is this one, that point, the first point at the origin. So that's going to be my start point. My end point, okay, there's my start. My end point is going to be that one. Now the direction that I want this arc to be, so I want it to be out here. So this is going to be a negative y direction. Okay, I'll double click, type in y, choose unit y. See, that's the positive direction. I mean, I can do something like that too. But if I put in a negative value here, so I can't just double click and type in negative 70 because it wants to do a subtraction. So I can type in negative 20 less than 0. That gives me a number slider from negative 20 to 0. I can plug that in, and there's my arc. Alright, so it knows what the radius is of that arc, so the number slider doesn't really matter. It just needs a negative x direction. Okay, and then you can do things like extrude. And just remember that extrusions are not going to cap automatically, so I'm double clicking and I'm putting in a z height for this. Alright, I'm glad I did this. I'm glad I went to extrude this because you see it's only extruding the arc. The arc and the polyline are not joined together. So the first thing I need to do is join the curves. So I'm joining my polyline to my 3-point arc. And I'm going to plug that into my base for the extrusion. And then this needs a value for the height, the extrusion height. So I'm going to put in 25. Okay. And I need to cap it. Okay, and that's a closed B-rep. So I can do things like subtract from it. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. One last thing I want to look at is it doesn't always have to be a polyline. So if I'm just going to turn off all these capsules. definition is getting sloppy, but I want you guys to see these things. So there's a polyline that's connecting all these points. I can also use what's called an interp curve. So interpolate, I want to use interpolate, makes an interpolated curve. I'm using the one not with the T in between. Okay, I can plug in my vertices. As you're always going to get that capsule to turn red when you plug in one vertice because it can't make a curve out of one vertice. It needs to be more than one. So I'll plug these in. And now I'm starting to get a freeform shape. Okay, so you can do that as well. So I hope this was helpful for you. I want to see some grasshopper massing models. Alright, if you found this video helpful, let me know why. Give me a thumbs up. Leave me a comment. You're going to see my head pop up. Click on my head to subscribe to my channel. In the upper right, I'll put some links to some other Grasshopper videos. Alright, I will see you next time.